With a new coach in Ray Yock, the Blue Bombers were the choice of many of the experts in 1978 to dethrone the Edmonton Eskimos as Western Conference champions. In taking over the Blue Bombers, Yock inherited a team that finished third in 1977, winning 10 games and losing 6. The 78 season began for the Bombers in the same place as the 77 campaign ended, Empire Stadium in Vancouver. And unfortunately, the end result wasn't much better. Against the Lions, 23-year-old Richard Crump got off to a good start. He converted this center screen into a 26-yard gain. And two-time rushing champion Jay Washington kept the drive alive with a burst up the middle. Harry Knight started the season and he also finished the year, but he didn't play in between because of injury. He gambled on 3rd and 7 and was rewarded with a 21-yard touchdown throw to Mike Holmes, a sophomore receiver who was destined to make many spectacular catches during the year. Holmes had help in the receiving department in rookie sensation Joe Poplawski. In his season debut, Poplawski showed that he was determined to make his mark in professional football with catches such as this. However, the Bombers needed more ammunition than that. They were beaten 30-14 by the BC Lions. Game 2 at home on July 18th was against the Western champion Eskimos. And the Bombers started quickly when Tom Wilkinson's pass, intended for Waddell Smith, was deflected by Merv Walker into the arms of Ron Southwick. And the 4-year veteran wasted little time scurrying into the end zone for a 30-yard touchdown. And for Southwick, stopping the opposition probably seemed less dangerous than accepting congratulations from his exuberant teammates. Turnovers played a key role in this game. Edmonton's front four created one, blocking an attempted punt by Bernie Ruoff that led to an Eskimo touchdown. And despite their initial score, the Bombers were in big trouble by halftime. In the second half, they fought back. And Ralph Brock to Mike Holmes produced this touchdown. Both Holmes and the officials were sure that he was over the line, despite the protests of Larry Heibaugh. The Bomber defensive unit held the Eskimos, and the next time they got the ball, Brock went to Gord Patterson, his favorite target of 1977, for a gain of 33. And on the next play, Richard Crump vaulted into the end zone for the touchdown. And Winnipeg fans, I'm sure, harbored hopes of a big comeback by their beloved Blue Bombers. However, with only 40 seconds remaining and the Bombers trailing by a single point, any hopes of pulling it out went out the window when Dave Fennell, chosen the country's outstanding defensive player, hit Brock as he attempted to throw, and Dale Potter recovered, thus preserving Edmonton's 29-28 win. So the month of July ended with the Bombers still winless, but things started to change early in August. Richard Crump continued his fast start, grabbing a Ralph Brock pass for a 74-yard touchdown. Defensive unit, maligned many times during the course of the year, rose up to stop the Riders on a third-down gamble at the Winnipeg 2, as Harry Walters and Elton Brown corralled the eventual rushing champion in the West, Mike Strickland. The big play was working on this second day of August. First it was Crump for 74 yards, then Brock to Mike Holmes as the pair combined for a 90-yard score. Ron Lancaster, noted for his late-minute heroics, tried to weave his magic one more time. But with just over a minute remaining, Merv Walker made a key defensive play to knock the ball away from Frank Russell on a third-down gamble, and the Bombers finally hit the win column with a 23-13 triumph. A week later, the Blue Bombers made it 2 in a row, completely controlling the game with a 29-7 decision over the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Many people, with that victory, obviously felt that the Bombers were off and running, as their record now stood at 2 wins and 2 losses as they prepared for Game 5 against the Calgary Stampeders. This game on the 16th of August at Winnipeg Stadium, and while the Bombers staged quite an aerial display, the Stampeders picked up the 2 points. Brock Tupoplawski was becoming a feared weapon in the Bomber arsenal. And while he was overshadowed at times, Gord Patterson still had the sure hands. Bernie Ruoff was kicking with renewed confidence, hitting on this 3-point effort from 16 yards away. Bill Carroll had a limited stint with the Bombers, but while in the employ of the Big Blue, he made a contribution, such as this 27-yard reception. And then gambling on third down, Brock was right on target with a touchdown throw to Gord Patterson. Later, it was Brock and Patterson combining talents again for 16 yards. Mixing things up, Brock went to rookie tight end Leo Ezerins for a 29-yard advance. But the drive was stopped, and Bernie Ruoff was called upon to split the uprights from 41 yards away. Ron Southwick, who scored a touchdown against Edmonton, was enjoying his time in the other team's backfield, as here he sacked quarterback John Hucknagel for a big loss of 17. And former Stampeder Brian Gervais, who spent most of the year in a backup capacity, hauled in an 18-yard pass. Gambling on third down, Brock displayed confidence in the passing game, throwing 13 yards to Bill Carroll. But penalties proved costly to the Bombers. An offside infraction wiped out 2 Bomber touchdowns, including this 34-yard throw to Leo Ezerins. And the final score of 29-21 left Winnipeg with a record of 2 wins and 3 losses after 5 games. A week later, the defense played well, but the offensive unit could only generate 8 points against the Eskimos. Returning home in a Bomber uniform for the first time, rookie Joe Poplawski hauled in a pass for 14 yards. And Ralph Brock to Mike Holmes was good for 25. And then Holmes, one of the most feared deep threats in the league, gathered in a 53-yard effort. But crossing the Edmonton goal line proved a problem. The Bombers were forced to settle for a 20-yard field goal by Bernie Ruoff, and their 4th loss of the year by a score of 14-8. Returning home on the 29th of August, the Bombers went on their biggest scoring spree of the year against the Grey Cup champion Montreal Alouettes. They scored 4 second-quarter touchdowns, including this one by Mike Holmes. Holmes hauled in 51 passes for 8 touchdowns during the season, many of them brilliant catches such as this. Richard Crump contributed to the second quarter outburst with a 32-yard touchdown gallop, getting several key blocks en route, one of them from center John Bonk. Everything worked for the Big Blue on that late August evening. Despite being under tremendous pressure, Brock manages to avoid would-be tacklers and flip the ball underhand to Richard Crump, converting an apparent loss into a first down. Crump scored 3 touchdowns in this game, including this 20-yard pass from Ralph Brock. On the season, the fourth-year running back out of Northeast Oklahoma State caught 48 passes. The Bomber defense had its biggest game of the year, sacking Montreal quarterbacks 7 times. When not dumping Alouette signal callers, they were intercepting passes. For sophomore Gary Rozalowicz, this was one of 5 he picked off during the year. Completing the carnage in the first half was this pass from Brock to Joe Poplawski. The rookie wide receiver somehow came up with the ball despite being covered by Dickie Harris and Dwayne Crump. And it was efforts such as this that enabled Poplawski to lead the country in receptions with 75. This touchdown helped Winnipeg rout Montreal 36-10. A week later, the Bombers traveled to Regina for their traditional Labor Day game. Richard Crump was destined to do a fair bit of traveling over the turf of Taylor Field. Early in the game, he hauled in a swing pass from Brock and scampered 77 yards. Patterson, runner-up for Shenley's award as best Canadian player a year ago, hauled in a 16-yard throw from Brock. Taylor Field's end zone fence thwarted an apparent Bomber touchdown when Brock threw a strike to Mike Holmes. Holmes managed to hang on to the ball and fortunately escaped injury when he crashed into the fence, but the officials ruled no touchdown. However, Richard Crump did put the ball into the end zone, even though he had to go high into the air to do it. Crump did it again later in the game, but this time he started his run 103 yards away. This touchdown gallop was the longest of the year in the CFL. As a matter of fact, only 4 others have ever run further on a single play. And with that touchdown and a 31-29 win, the Bombers were batting .500 with 4 wins and 4 losses. One of the most exciting games of the year took place in Ottawa on September 9th. The game had a little of everything, including this interception by rookie Reggie Pearson. Pearson had 5 interceptions for the year. And Brock to Poplawski continued to be a potent weapon in the Bomber arsenal. Jay Washington, striving to crack the 1,000-yard barrier for the 3rd straight year, scored a touchdown on a 7-yard draw play. On 6 occasions during the year, Washington ran for touchdowns. This one gave Winnipeg an early 11-8 lead over the Rough Riders. There were times when Ralph Brock may have felt he was running for his life, but he still managed to get the pass away to Gord Patterson in the end zone. While he didn't make the catch, the officials called interference on Peter Kreppen, and the Bombers had an automatic first down at the 10. On the next play, Brock looked for Joe Poplawski and found him all alone in the end zone. But it wasn't just this catch that was to endear the first-year man from the University of Alberta to Bomber fans. An outstanding soccer player, Poplawski, on the ensuing kickoff, used his skills from this sport to catch the Riders completely off guard. But first, let's take another look at the touchdown catch in the end zone by Poplawski. Now on the kickoff, Poplawski booted the ball with his left foot, and he could not have executed the play more perfectly, hitting Gord Patterson, who was streaking down the sidelines. And suddenly the Bombers had a chance to pull off a miracle comeback. With less than a minute remaining in the game and the Bombers trailing by 5, Brock caught the Riders in a blitz and dumped the screen pass to Jay Washington for a 34-yard advance. And with only 38 seconds remaining, Washington on the draw romped into the end zone from 6 yards out. During the year, he ran for 1,032 yards, but none of his carries had more impact than this as the Bombers posted a 31-29 come-from-behind victory. A week later, back home at Winnipeg Stadium, the Bombers faced Toronto, and ironically, Bud Riley, the former Bomber coach, was making his debut as Toronto's head knock after replacing Leo Cahill. But the Argos didn't have any more success defending against Joe Poplawski than any of the Bombers' other opponents. This touchdown pass was one of 8 Poplawski caught during the season, and one of the reasons he was named Rookie of the Year in the CFL. Poplawski acquired by the Bombers as compensation for Tommy Scott, who played out his option and inked a 3-year contract with the Edmonton Eskimos. What an acquisition he proved to be. There was never any question Mike Holmes possessed abundant talent. Fortunately, there were occasions when he had difficulties in keeping a hair-trigger temper under control. When Jay Washington maneuvered to the outside, there were very few defensive backs who could run him down, as the Argos quickly discovered. Crowd applauding this effort by Jay Washington. The Bombers were also plagued by construction problems during the year. Their new stand on the east side was not completed. However, they will have those additional seats for 1979, bringing capacity over 33,000. In the Bombers' secondary, Gary Rozalowicz proved to be a strong defender against the pass. And Bernie Ruoff had obviously regained his confidence. This was one of 31 field goals he kicked during the year, giving the Bombers a sweep of their eastern opponents by virtue of this 1914 victory. Ruoff's punting was also improved. His average of 46.9 was second best in the country, and against BC on September 24th, when kicking into a strong wind, Ruoff alertly scampered downfield to recover his own kick. Not all of Poplawski's 75 receptions were crossings, but the record book doesn't reveal how, just how many. Joe Forqueen received an assist on this 32-yard play. It was that play that helped set the stage for a Bomber touchdown. Brock to Mike Holmes in the end zone produced the score. Defending against Mike Holmes was proving a challenge for even the league's best defensive backs. Kenny Hinton could certainly verify just how difficult it was to cover Mike Holmes. This play is good for 59 yards and another touchdown. Ralph Brock throwing to Joe Poplawski was another scoring weapon on this windy afternoon. The University of Alberta graduate was certainly making his mark in his very first season in professional football. Matter of fact, there were times in this game that Joe Forqueen must have wondered just what he had to do to stop Poplawski. A deflection earlier in the game, and here a near interception. But the officials ruled a simultaneous catch. They award Poplawski a 44-yard touchdown. And with a 32-25 win, the Bombers stretched their winning streak to 5 in a row. The next weekend, they moved to Empire Stadium for the critical home-and-home series that would ultimately eliminate the Lions from the playoffs. A short punt and a no-yards penalty gave Winnipeg excellent field position early in the game, and this swing pass to Jay Washington produced a 7-yard touchdown. The Lions attempted a little of the razzle-dazzle that had been so successful a year earlier, but the Bomber defenders were prepared. This was the opening play of the second half, and middle linebacker Harry Walters came up with the interception and a 25-yard return. It seemed that Poplawski particularly enjoyed his outings against the Lions. This effort produced a 6-yard touchdown. Mike Holmes also caused nightmares for the Lions secondary. He hauled in this 30-yard throw from Ralph Brock. And that set up a Bomber touchdown, Brock to Poplawski. Impressive credentials for the man acquired as compensation for Tommy Scott. 75 receptions, 8 touchdowns, and 998 yards. Ralph Brock was more effective throwing the ball than running with it, but there were occasions when running paid dividends. The man who was the Bombers' most effective runner was Jay Washington. He averaged 5.2 yards per carry. This 8-yard romp helped the Bombers win their 6th straight, 38-27. That string and hopes of catching Edmonton for first place were shattered on October 15th when the Eskimos walloped the Bombers 38-10 in a game the Grey Cup champions controlled from start to finish. Second place was now the Winnipeg objective, but to achieve that end, they needed 2 more wins. They got one of them against Saskatchewan, although they had some anxious moments. With the score tied at 7 and just a minute remaining, Mike Holmes, one of the most feared punt return specialists in the country, used his speed and clever moves to give the Bombers field position with a 44-yard run back. And then the bomb. Brock to Gord Patterson. Well, the Canadian slot back almost fumbled it away. He was able to survive the juggling act, giving the Bombers a 51-yard gain and a most important first down. With just seconds remaining, Ralph Brock lugged the ball into the end zone for his 3rd touchdown of the year and a 13-7 Winnipeg win. And that had clinched the playoff berth. was a question of second or third place, and that would be decided in a home-and-home series with Calgary. Unfortunately, even the presence of Captain Blue, the Bombers' #1 cheerleader, failed to help. Brock and Mike Holmes did their best to win it, as evidenced by this touchdown. They tried again later in the game. Gord Patterson also made his contribution. His 69 receptions were second only to Poplawski. This was one of 3 touchdowns he scored during the year, but the Bombers needed more, and they lost 28-24. So second place and home field advantage for the Western semifinal was to be decided at McMahon Stadium on November 5th. And it was a bad day in more ways than one. The lone Winnipeg touchdown occurred on this 20-yard pass from Brock to Brian Gervais. Used mainly as a backup, it was Gervais' only touchdown of the year. He was replacing Mike Holmes, who was injured the week before. But the big story was a knee injury suffered by Ralph Brock. It occurred on this play. The seemingly indestructible quarterback went down, and he was finished for the rest of this game and was also out of the lineup for the semifinal the following week. And Bomber fans realized right then that 1978 was not going to be their year. Heading into the playoffs without your #1 quarterback and with your #2 and #3 signal callers less than 100%, you do have problems, and the picture of Ray Yark as he looked out onto the field pretty well told the story. And in the semifinal, the Bombers were just no match for the Calgary Stampeders. They were beaten by a score of 38-4. But the Bombers have high hopes for 1979.